In 2016, the Food and Drug Administration tested American honey for glyphosate for the first time in the agency's history. For decades, the FDA had tested food for residues of hundreds of other pesticides every single year. Glyphosate, the most widely used herbicide on Earth, the active chemical in Roundup. They had never once looked for it in honey. When they finally did, the results were uniform. Every single sample contained glyphosate residues, not most of them. Every jar they tested, including the organic ones. Documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request revealed that some samples contained 653 parts per billion of glyphosate, more than 10 times the limit allowed in the European Union, but the United States has no maximum residue limit for glyphosate in honey. Not a high limit, not a lenient limit. The number doesn't exist. Nobody wrote one, and glyphosate is only the beginning. In 2023, class action lawsuits targeted America's largest honey cooperative, Costco's Bulk Honey, and one of the fastest-growing premium honey brands in the country for allegedly selling products diluted with undeclared corn syrup, rice syrup, or beet sugar. In 2025, the World Beekeeping Awards, an international competition that judges honey submitted by producers around the globe, made an extraordinary decision. They canceled the honey competition entirely. The reason was that organizers could not guarantee the authenticity of the entries. An industry competition that exists to celebrate the best honey in the world shut itself down because it couldn't verify that the honey submitted was actually honey. We investigated 10 of the most popular honey brands sold in the United States. What we found goes deeper than fake honey. It's a product with no federal standard of identity, no glyphosate limit, and a testing infrastructure so outdated that the companies making fraudulent sweeteners openly advertise how to beat it. We're counting down all 10 from concerning to genuinely alarming, and finishing with the 3 sources that actually deliver real honey. Number 10. Great Value Honey. Walmart's house brand. The cheapest honey on the shelf, sold in a clear plastic squeeze bottle for a few dollars. A class action lawsuit alleged that Walmart falsely marketed Great Value Raw Honey and Great Value Organic Raw Honey as raw, even though testing reportedly showed the honey had been excessively heated during processing. When honey is heated past certain temperatures, it loses enzymes, amino acids, and volatile compounds that consumers specifically associate with raw honey. The word raw on the label implies those compounds are intact. The lawsuit claimed they were not. Try something with whatever honey you have in your kitchen right now. Think about how long it's been sitting there. Real raw honey crystallizes over time. It thickens, it turns cloudy, it forms granules. That's not a defect. That's proof that the sugars in the honey are behaving the way natural sugars behave. If your honey has been in the pantry for a year or more and still looks exactly the same, still pours exactly the same, still has the same uniform golden clarity it had when you bought it, it was processed at temperatures that destroyed the compounds the label claims are inside. The class action said it plainly. The label says raw. The processing says otherwise. And the next brand costs more and carries a certification that should mean something. But what it means and what it guarantees are 2 different things. Number 9. Busy Bee Organic Honey. Busy Bee is packed by Golden Heritage Foods, the nation's 3rd largest honey packer, a company that moves roughly 55 million pounds of honey annually under its own brands and dozens of store brand labels. In 2011, Food Safety News conducted one of the most comprehensive investigations into American honey ever published. They tested honey from grocery stores across the country and found that most store-brand honey had all pollen removed through a process called ultrafiltration. Busy Bee Organic Honey was among the products found with no pollen present. Ultrafiltration is not the same as normal filtering, which removes visible debris like wax and bee parts using standard mesh filters. Ultrafiltration heats honey and forces it through microfilters so fine that they strip out pollen grains entirely. Without pollen, the geographic and botanical origin of honey cannot be verified. You cannot confirm whether it's clover honey or wildflower, whether it came from Texas or was transshipped through Vietnam from a facility in China. The organic certification on the front of the jar requires that bees forage on organic land. Without pollen to verify origin, that claim cannot be independently confirmed. Organic and pollen-free. One of those claims contradicts the other. Number 8. Sioux Bee Clover Honey. Sioux Bee is the flagship product of the Sioux Honey Association Co-op, headquartered in Sioux City, Iowa. Sioux Honey has been operating for over 100 years and describes itself as America's largest honey marketing organization. They represent more than 150 beekeepers nationwide and have production facilities in Iowa, Georgia, and California. The name says co-op. The scale says industrial. A class action lawsuit, Shoulder versus Sioux Honey Association, was filed in the Eastern District of New York. The plaintiff challenged Sioux Bee's 100% pure labeling because testing found glyphosate residues in the honey. Sioux Honey argued that any glyphosate present resulted from bees naturally interacting with agriculture, not from the company's production process. The court disagreed with the framing, ruling that it is not so clear that a reasonable customer would understand the terms pure or 100% pure to mean that trace amounts of glyphosate could end up in honey from the bees' foraging process. The case resulted in a $995 million settlement. And when Food Safety News repeatedly asked Sioux Honey to comment on ultrafiltration practices, specifically what Sioux Bee does with its foreign honey, and whether it's ultra-filtered when they purchase it, Sioux Honey declined to respond, repeatedly. Read the label on a jar of Sioux Bee right now if you have one. Does it tell you where the honey came from? Not which country, which state, which floral source, which season. If the answer is just clover honey with no further detail, you're trusting a label that a federal court found potentially misleading. $995 million in settlement costs, repeated refusal to answer questions about ultrafiltration, and a court that disagreed with their definition of pure. Sioux Honey also packs honey for other brands and store labels. Keep that in mind as we move into the next 4 entries, because they share something in common that connects them all. Number 7. Market Pantry and Good and Gather Honey. Target store brands. Target spent years positioning itself as the smarter, more intentional grocery option. Better design, cleaner aesthetics. The store young families choose because the experience feels more curated than a typical big box retailer. Their Market Pantry and Archer Farms honey products were named in class action lawsuits filed in Florida, alleging that the honey had been ultra-filtered to the point that all pollen was removed. Florida is one of the few states that has a honey standard of identity, meaning anything labeled as honey must contain pollen. The lawsuits alleged that Target's store brand honey did not meet that standard. Without pollen, there is no way to verify the floral source printed on the label. Clover honey becomes a marketing phrase rather than a botanical fact. Better design, same honey. Target's branding says intentional sourcing. The lawsuit says all the pollen was removed. Number 6. Berry Hill Clover Honey. Aldi's store brand. Named in the same Florida class action lawsuits alongside Target, Publix, and Walgreens for selling ultra-filtered honey with all pollen removed. Aldi's entire business model is built on aggressive cost compression. Fewer staff, smaller stores, limited product selection, private label everything. That model delivers real savings on many products. But when the product is honey, and the savings come from sourcing at the absolute lowest possible price point, the cost compression shows up in what's missing from the jar. Aldi's model is built on price. The honey reflects it. Number 5. Walgreens store brand honey. Also named in the Florida ultrafiltration class action. Honey sold at a pharmacy chain, sourced at pharmacy chain margins. The honey aisle at Walgreens is not a destination. It's an impulse purchase on the way to the checkout counter. The sourcing reflects exactly that level of priority. If this investigation is already changing how you look at the honey in your pantry, you're about halfway through. The 4 store brands we just covered were all named in the same class action for the same problem. All pollen removed. No verifiable origin. No way to confirm the floral source on the label. And the next few entries are where the investigation shifts from store brands to the names that health-conscious shoppers specifically choose when they decide to buy better honey. Number 4. Publix store brand honey. Publix is one of the most trusted regional grocery chains in the United States. Their Orange Blossom honey and Pure Clover honey were named in the same Florida ultrafiltration class action as Target, Aldi, and Walgreens. Orange Blossom on the label. No pollen in the jar to verify it. Publix has stronger consumer trust than most of the retailers ranked below it on this list. That trust makes the ultrafiltration allegation more significant, not less. When a brand you believe in sells you a product labeled with a specific botanical origin, and the jar contains nothing that can verify that claim, the trust itself becomes the product being sold. Number 3. Kirkland Signature Honey. Costco's bulk honey, sold in 5-pound jugs at a price that undercuts most competitors by a wide margin. Class action lawsuits targeted Costco's Honey Queen branded honey for allegedly containing honey diluted with corn syrup, rice syrup, or beet sugar. The core claim was straightforward. Labels saying pure honey, while the product contained undeclared sweeteners, violate FDA standards and consumer trust. Costco generates over $254 billion in annual revenue. Their purchasing power sets the price floor for the entire honey supply chain. When Costco tells a supplier what they're willing to pay for 5 pounds of honey, the supplier meets that number. The question is how. Drizzle a thin line of Kirkland honey across a plate right now if you have some. Real honey holds its shape for a moment, forming a coil or mound before slowly spreading. Honey that's been extended with syrup runs immediately, thin and watery, like pancake syrup. 5 pounds at that price. The question isn't whether it's a good deal. The question is what had to be compromised to hit that price point at that volume. That makes 4 store brands named in the same ultrafiltration class action, and a 5th named in a separate adulteration class action. The pattern isn't about one bad retailer. It's about an entire retail model that treats honey as a commodity to be sourced at the lowest possible cost, from suppliers willing to cut whatever corners are necessary to meet the price target. We're getting close to the brands that will genuinely surprise you. Number 2 in particular. The name that health-conscious shoppers switch to when they decide to stop buying store-brand honey. The one they trust. Stay with us. Number 2. Nature Nate's 100% pure raw and unfiltered honey. This is the brand you reach for when you've decided to care about honey quality. Bold labeling, clean design, prominent raw and unfiltered claims, true source certified seal. Nature Nate's is one of the fastest growing honey brands in America, available at Whole Foods, Kroger, Target, and most major natural food retailers. The marketing is built on a single promise: what's in the jar is real honey and nothing else. Then the lawsuits came. Class action litigation alleged that Nature Nate's conventional honey line was adulterated, diluted with cheaper sweeteners that don't belong in a product labeled 100% pure. Nature Nate's has denied the allegations. The case raised a specific question that applies to the entire industry. How do you verify purity when the standard tests can't catch the most common adulterants? Here's the testing problem. The traditional C4 isotope ratio test, which has been the industry standard for decades, can detect corn syrup adulteration because corn is a C4 plant with a different carbon isotope signature than honey. But rice syrup, beet sugar, and wheat syrup are C3 plant derivatives with isotope signatures that overlap with honey's. The C4 test misses them entirely. Some rice syrup producers openly advertise that their products will not cause adulterated honey to fail the C4 test. They market their syrup specifically to fraudsters who want to extend honey without getting caught. The gold standard tests, NMR spectroscopy and high-resolution mass spectrometry with constantly updated databases, are available almost exclusively through laboratories in Germany. The United States does not have domestic labs that offer these tests at reasonable cost. The country that imports more honey than almost any nation on Earth cannot adequately test it. There's a crucial distinction to make here. Momavation independently sent Nature Nate's organic raw and unfiltered honey to an EPA-certified lab and tested it for glyphosate and over 500 additional pesticides. The results came back non-detect across every compound tested. That's the organic line. The conventional line, which is what most consumers buy, and what the lawsuit targeted is a different product with different sourcing. The organic version tested clean. The conventional version is the one in question. Which one is in your pantry matters. The brand health-conscious shoppers reach for with confidence. A class action that says the conventional line may not match the label. An organic line that tested clean. And a national testing infrastructure that cannot reliably distinguish real honey from a blend specifically engineered to beat the test. The gap between what this brand promises and what the industry can verify is the gap the entire honey market lives inside. And that brings us to number 1. The finding that made us question whether any honey on any shelf in any store in this country can guarantee what the label promises. Number 1. The glyphosate betrayal. This isn't about one brand. It's about every jar of honey produced anywhere near modern agriculture. And in the United States, that means virtually every jar on every shelf. When the FDA finally tested honey for glyphosate in 2016, every sample was positive. Not most, not the imported ones, not the cheap ones. Every sample, including organic. The Abraxas Scientific Research Company had already found glyphosate in 41 of 69 honey samples in 2015, at levels ranging from 17 to 163 parts per billion. The FDA's own chemist found samples at 653 parts per billion, more than 10 times the European Union's limit of 50 parts per billion. Bees forage up to 5 miles from their hive. Within that radius, any field treated with Roundup, any golf course sprayed with glyphosate, any suburban lawn where a homeowner used weed killer on a Saturday morning, any roadside that the county sprayed for vegetation control becomes a contamination source. The beekeeper can do everything right. Organic practices, chemical-free hive management, careful extraction. None of it matters if a soybean farmer 3 miles east sprayed Roundup last Tuesday. The bees don't know. They forage what's available, and they bring the residues back to the hive. The European Union sets the glyphosate limit for honey at 50 parts per billion. The United States has no limit. Not a higher limit, not a more lenient standard. The number does not exist. No one at the FDA, the EPA, or the USDA has written a maximum residue tolerance for glyphosate in honey. The regulatory void is complete. And in the FDA's own FY 2023 Pesticide Residue Monitoring Report, published in December 2025, glyphosate was the most frequently detected pesticide in animal-derived foods, with 25% of honey samples showing detectable residues. This is the same gap we found in bread, in coffee, and in olive oil. Organic certification verifies that glyphosate was not intentionally applied. It does not verify that glyphosate isn't in the finished product. The USDA organic seal on a jar of honey means the beekeeper followed organic protocols. It does not mean the bees only visited organic flowers. There is no certification on Earth that can control where a bee flies. In the European Union, starting June 2026, new regulations require full country of origin disclosure on honey blends, including the percentage from each source country. No more hiding behind blend of EU and non-EU honeys. The United States has no equivalent requirement and no plans to create one. You chose honey because you believed it was the most natural sweetener available. The FDA found the most widely used synthetic herbicide in every jar they tested. The limit that should protect you was never written, and the certification that should guarantee purity cannot follow a bee past the fence line of an organic farm. Now that you know what to avoid, here are the 3 sources that actually held up. These aren't consolation picks. These are producers and sourcing methods that address the specific problems we just covered: pollen removal, adulteration, glyphosate contamination, and opaque supply chains. Clean pick number 3. Desert Creek Honey, a family-owned apiary in Texas that sells raw honey direct from their own hives, not packed by an industrial operation and resold under a label, produced, extracted, and bottled by the family that tends the bees. The honey is unprocessed, unheated, and unfiltered with pollen intact. Full traceability to specific apiaries. You can ask exactly where the hives are and what's growing within foraging range. Desert Creek built their reputation through farmers market presence and direct consumer relationships, not through retail distribution deals with grocery chains. The limitation is real, distribution is limited. Seasonal availability affects what's in stock. The price is higher than store brands. But the honey crystallizes, it contains pollen, and you can call the people who produced it and ask any question you want about how it was made. That transparency is what every brand on the avoid list could offer and doesn't. Clean pick number 2. Heavenly Organics. The first honey in the world to earn the Detox Project's glyphosate residue-free certification. This is not a USDA organic seal, which verifies a process. This is a certification that verifies a result. Third-party laboratory testing confirmed that glyphosate residues in Heavenly Organics honey are below the detection limit. The honey is wild forest honey, sustainably harvested from colonies in regions with minimal agricultural chemical exposure, organic and non-GMO certified. The limitation is the price, which is premium, and the distribution, which is limited to specialty retailers and online. The flavor profile is different from conventional clover honey because the floral sources are wild forest rather than managed agricultural fields. For anyone who specifically chose honey as a health food and wants verified confirmation that the one chemical most commonly found in honey isn't in theirs, this is the only brand we found with a lab-backed certification proving it. Clean pick number 1. Your local beekeeper. This is the first time across all of our investigations that the number 1 recommendation isn't a brand, it's a source, a person you can talk to, ask questions, and hold accountable. Local beekeepers sell honey with pollen intact, unheated, unfiltered, from hive locations you can visit. You can ask exactly where the hives sit. You can ask what crops and landscapes are within the 5-mile foraging radius. You can ask whether nearby farms spray glyphosate. You can ask when the honey was extracted and how it was stored. No jar on a grocery store shelf will ever answer those questions. A person standing behind a table at a farmer's market will. Crystallization is the single most reliable indicator of authenticity you can observe at home. Real honey crystallizes. It thickens, it granulates, it changes texture over weeks and months. That's not a flaw in the product. That's proof that you're holding actual honey with its natural sugar structure intact. Honey that has been ultra-filtered, heated, or extended with syrup resists crystallization because the compounds that drive the process have been removed or diluted. If your honey crystallizes, keep it. You're holding the real thing. The limitation is honest. Most local beekeepers do not send their honey to third-party labs. You're trusting a person, not a certificate. But you can look that person in the eye, ask where the bees forage, and make your own judgment about whether the answer is credible. That human-to-human verification is something no industrial supply chain, no store brand, and no class action tested label can replicate. Before you close this, here's the one rule worth keeping. Buy honey from someone who can tell you where the hives are. That single question eliminates ultra-filtered imports, laundered Chinese honey, syrup-adulterated blends, and anonymous store brands in one sentence. You don't need to memorize brand names. You don't need to recall lawsuit details or glyphosate numbers. One question: where are the hives? If the seller can point to a location on a map, you're buying honey. If they can't, you're buying a label. If someone in your life puts honey in their tea every morning because they think it's the most natural sweetener available, sending them this video is probably the most useful thing you can do with it. The brands on this list are in millions of kitchens right now. The people who bought them trusted a word on a jar: pure, raw, natural. The lab results, the class actions, and the canceled competition tell a different story. If this changed how you think about what's in your honey jar, you'll want to see what we found when we investigated America's 10 most popular peanut butter brands. That video is on screen now.